Hello everyone, here with a quicker than usual lore evolution for you, the show where we look at the production histories of our favourite factions, characters and technologies from the realm of sci-fi and fantasy. Today we're looking at something which hasn't actually been part of official Star Trek canon, Starfleet Marines. This is actually an idea which dates all the way back to Star Trek the original series. Whatever faction the Enterprise was meant to be a part of took a while to be defined in the first two seasons of the show, but the concept of this faction or organization having a Marine Corps was something Gene Roddenberry originally came up with. Having served in the US Air Force in the Pacific Theater of World War II, it was highly likely Roddenberry encountered many US Marines being stationed and transported in and out of various Air Force and naval bases. Seeing as how the Enterprise was to serve the function of a heavy cruiser, it made sense to him to have the ship carrying a contingent of Marines. However, this was never something really fully realised on the show. Instead, we have the famous red shirt security forces of the Enterprise, which were basically just there to be killed off. It's pure speculation as to why these Marines never materialised in the show, but it could be a combination of budget and scripts. Building new sets of armour, uniforms and weapons might have simply been a bit too much for the low-budget show. But at the same time, there aren't a whole lot of stories in the original series which really require Marines. Perhaps the red shirts already filled that role. In the Harve Bennett-produced Star Trek movies, Starfleet took on a more militaristic naval style at the behest of Wrath of Khan director Nicholas Meyer. There are a few throwaway shots here and there, and they're never named as such, but it seems the idea of a Starfleet Marine Corps does exist within these films. In The Search for Spock in the Undiscovered Country, we see appearances from these armoured personnel responding to various security breaches. These guys could just be ship security officers, but their prominent armour and differing uniforms underneath has me thinking these guys are meant to be something else. We also have Cornel West in Star Trek VI. Starfleet usually uses naval rankings, and Colonel isn't one of them. Instead, it's a military ranking. Being that the scene he first appears in has him outlining a rescue plan, talking about getting in and getting out with minimal casualties, it could be very possible this character is meant to be some kind of high-ranking Starfleet Marines officer. But easily the most prominent version of this idea comes in Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. In order to rescue some prisoners, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Sulu and Uhura all take a shuttle down accompanied by a squad of very militaristic-looking guys. They come equipped with bulkier phasers and even riot shields of some kind. They're even dressed in clothing which resembles, oddly enough, British army jumpers. Throughout the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, the idea of a Starfleet Marine Corps is pretty much non-existent. As Gene Roddenberry had doubled down on his idea of a utopian future, the writers and producers of these shows went out of their way to try and avoid military terms when describing anything to do with Starfleet. Space Doc made a great tweet about this. This did have some unintended side effects though when Deep Space Nine decided to go for a full-blown war story arc. While Starfleet ships can certainly pack a punch in space, when it comes to ground combat, Starfleet could really use some improvement. Episodes like the Siege of AR-558 show regular Starfleet officers stuck in a brutal ongoing ground battle, and next to the Jem'Hadar forces, they seem pretty outmatched. It isn't until Star Trek Enterprise we finally see this idea fully expressed. While they may not be Starfleet Marines, the Makos which join the crew in Season 3 are a great addition to the ship and its mission. Being in a dangerous part of space on a high-stakes mission, the Makos become extremely valuable assets to Captain Archer. Rather than the red shirts killed off in the opening act, the Makos are showcased as a well-trained, efficient squad. They're crack snipers when need be, and can more than hold their own in hand-to-hand combat. Not to mention their presence conjured several compelling character threads in the latter half of the show, which would no doubt have expanded even further had Enterprise been given a 5th season. Speaking for myself, I always thought the idea of Starfleet Marines made a hell of a lot of sense. I know some Trek fans have a knee-jerk reaction to anything in Starfleet being shown as anything resembling a military, but that is one of the functions it does serve in the Federation. Despite their progressive ideals and peace-first mantra, the Federation has still been involved in dozens of wars during its existence. Having Starfleet Marines on standby would be an extremely valuable thing. Asking Starfleet officers to be proficient in the sciences, technology, ship command, and diplomacy on top of combat is a mighty big ask. Having an elite force on standby to make sure Starfleet crews can adequately fight back when attacked is simply a practical idea, and it seems numerous Star Trek writers agree. Starfleet Marines were a recurring element in the often forgotten Star Trek FASA RPG games, showing up in 3 different modules. In other non-canon material, the Marines make an appearance in the novel The Forgotten War. In the game Star Trek Online, rather than a Starfleet-specific Marine Corps, the game simply uses the Makos again, depicting them as an internal branch of Starfleet. And the game's Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, which I covered recently, showed Voyager forming the Hazard Team because the regular ship security officers simply weren't good enough. It's totally possible to include something like a Starfleet Marine Corps in the Federation without damaging any of its progressive ideals. If exploring space has proven anything, it's that it can be extremely dangerous. There are numerous factions out there who will attack first no matter what. I think it would not only be a logical part of the universe, but also sets up the potential for some fantastic stories. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do and want to see more videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on all my new uploads. If you like what I do and want to help the channel grow, join me over on my Patreon where you can see videos like this early. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.